Robert Pouge 8422. Robert, please forgive me if I've mangled your last name, asked in a video I made about does moisture escape a down bag in the cold. Robert asked about, is it better to have your sleeping bag in a hot sack, in a bivy, in a tent? Would it be better to keep the bivy in a sleeping bag, or is the sleeping bag in a bivy? And is a bivy more breathable enough to allow sufficient moisture to escape, or whether it might make matters worse? Do you have any views on this, please? Absolutely, Robert. Thank you very much. By the way, ask questions in the description below or in the comments below. That way I can hopefully answer it. Thank you for the questions because it gives me great ideas for video. So I've got a couple of different things here. I've got my tent that I've used the Namage 2, and that's got obviously plenty of space for me to dry off my sleeping bag in the morning. This is my Antelope sleeping bag from Western Mountaineering that I've used for, I don't know, 15 plus years, doing great. And it's gotten kind of moist in any tent that I'm in. But the problem with a bivy sack, especially in an emergency situation where you have a completely waterproof sort of shell and you've got that over your sleeping bag, is it's going to get wet, really wet. Now, some people use bivvies with great success. I've seen them use synthetic and others use down, but once you put a waterproof shell over your down, there is no way it's not going to soak, because there's no way for your heat to generate enough, or your body to generate enough heat to push your moisture and transpiration and breathing to the outer layers of the sleeping bag where they'll begin to escape. But if you're in a bivy, there's a very small space for that moisture to escape, so that's the downside of a bivy. Now, what you can do is you get that bivy and you get it going, you get this sealed up, you're going to need a tarp. That's what I actually do, is instead of using a bivy, I prefer to tarp camp in the winter, in the summer, whenever possible. Now, if I'm going Storm and Norman or anything, I've got my Hilleberg tents that I use. That is the ultimate ventilation, is if you use a tarp, the whole goal is to prevent condensation that falls out. It's really weird why that happens. I haven't totally figured out the physics of it. But when I'm sleeping in a tarp tent, and the tarp's maybe 2 feet above me or like 60 centimeters above me, there's complete 360 ventilation. So even though I'm completely open to the elements and there is some cooling effect, that tarp keeps me completely dry from the condensation falling out of the air, and never have I woken up wet in a tarp camping situation. I have woken up wet in my tents. I have woken up wet cowboy camping, especially cowboy camping. That's the worst, where you camp in your sleeping bag under the stars. You get soaked because that condensation falls on there. But I will say I can never remember a time that I was soaked when I'm camping under my tarp. The moisture was a little bit, if the moisture on the sleeping bag was pretty intense if I was in a moist location like a swampy area or near a creek, but nothing like being in the open or being in a bivy. So my experience, if you want the driest experience possible, is to actually tarp camp, because then there's the greatest air motion to take away that moisture, and it makes life a lot better. And that's just my personal experience. Other people swear by bivvies. They're super small. They can take a rager of a storm, but there is zero space to do anything, and you're out in the rain. I can snuggle under my tarp and take my stove and cook and do all that. And I talk about that sort of experience in my book, Adventure Expedition 1, and also my book, The Motivated Amateur's Guide to Winter Camping, is just simply use a tarp. The Ray Jardine, the greatest long-distance backpacker guy, like ultimate guru, he uses a tarp, and he's probably backpacked 10,000 miles. I don't even know. Him and his wife go crazy distances. They've used a tarp. They swear by it, and it's super light. And by the way, I did get a request from a longtime subscriber, Ghost369, talking about the Western Mountaineering hot sack. Ghost369 asked, I'm wondering if you could do a shout out to Climb On Equipment in British Columbia, Canada. I mentioned your name and that you recommend the product. Here is a VBL sack, and Ghost369, thank you so much for recommending Climb On Equipment in British Columbia, Canada. I will definitely have to check out that store when I'm up there next. Thank you very much, 369 for the subscription, and thank you for the request to give a shout out to Climb On Equipment in British Columbia, Canada.